So this just came in my email the other day. So March 29th, Ryan Dahl, the creator of Node, and also the guy who did 10 Things I Hate About Node at a Node conference, regret about Node, made Deno. And Deno is actually officially a company. They just announced that they got funded. Let me read from it's my email, so I'm just going to read it. It says, the folks behind Deno founded the original creator by Node.js have raised $4.9 million and formed a company to help push it further forward, including plans to hire more full-time engineers. They've also unveiled Deno Deploy, a globally distributed JavaScript VM of sorts. Exciting times are afoot. So there's a bunch of interesting things here in scripting and programming languages. Bottom line between a scripting and programming languages is it compiled at runtime or compiled at compile time? At development time. That's the big difference to me. So it's clear. So blah, 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 extending web programming. But over the decade, we find JavaScript hopelessly fragmented, deeply tied to bad infrastructure, and irrevocably ruled by committees without an incentive to innovate. No kidding. As the browser platform moves forward at a rapid pace, server-side JavaScript has stagnated. It really has. Node is pretty much dead. Deno is a company, yep, as of March 29th. So Deno is our attempt to breathe new life into the system, to provide a modern productive programming system that adheres to browser APIs. Deno is not a monolithic system, but rather a set of technologies that we believe can be repurposed for a variety of needs. Again, Deno, the biggest things Deno brings to the table is Deno is TypeScript by default. Deno, everything is in a sandbox, so you have to provide explicit access to the file system when you run the thing, which is very nice for people concerned about security. It's, in a certain way, it kind of feels like a sort of like a shrouded containerized version of Node, sort of. And of course, it has the dinosaur, the cute dinosaur guy, and it's got Ryan Dahl. Fun fact, Deno originally the interpreter was written in Go, and then because of garbage collection, which is obvious, they went to Rust. So this is a really solid use of Rust, despite Rust, crappy governance and syntax. It's a good solid pick for this particular project. Isometric graphic is really cool. It is. I like that it's isometric too. So in order for the produce, we have raised 4.9 million, which in Silicon Valley money is not a lot, but still. Our investors are from Four Rivers Ventures, given from Rich Company, blah, Mozilla Corporation, Shasta Venture, longtime collaborator, Ben, blah. Means that we will have a staff of full-time experts engineers working to improve Deno. We will ensure that the issues are addressed, bugs are fixed, the time that releases are made. Business people is asking the features in, yeah. Rest assured that Deno will remain MIT licensed, which is too bad because it should have been. They should do Apache. MIT is not safe enough. It doesn't give patent grants. I think they should change. I think that's a mistake. For Deno to grow, it will be maximally useful. It must remain permissively free. We don't believe the open core business model is right for programming platform like Deno, nor do I. In fact, I think that GitLab is proving that the open core business model is failing. GitLab is failing pretty harshly right now compared to GitHub. And I wanted it to succeed, but it's not working. We don't want to find ourselves in an unfortunate position where we have to decide if certain features are for paid customers only. If you want our conference talks, you'll find we've been hinting at commercial applications of this infrastructure for years. So this is really, really free. We're bullish about the technology stack we built and intend to pursue those commercial applications ourselves. Our business will build on the open source project, not attempt to monetize it directly. Interesting. That's super interesting. I wonder what they're going to call that. I just love Ryan Dahl. I love him. He thinks so outside the box. Node was largely just his experiment. Honestly, it was an experiment. He said, hey, can I put V8 engine on the command line? And it worked. And then everybody went with it. But it was his version 1, really. He didn't really get a chance to really well design the thing from scratch. And this one he did. He took every problem he had with Node, every regret he had with Node. He talked about 10 things I regret about Node. This is why I'm super excited to see what happens. with this, because I mean, even Guido van Rossum. So 10 things I regret about Node. He like I cannot watch this thing enough, man. I love this. You got to watch the whole thing, and he's just so cool. He's so laid back. Um, I'll copy a video URL. You can go find that for yourself. But here you go. Oh God, that is not what I meant to do. Neither is that. So I got 19 minutes left. Let's see. So go watch that video. I just really love Ryan Dahl because he's grown up, he's matured, he's an amazing talent, and Deno was designed from the ground up to be everything that he learned was wrong with his accidental experiment, which became Node. Yeah, and he has the balls to criticize his own creation, which is why I just love him so much. He's like, no, it sucked. We learned a lot of things here. My favorite quote from that presentation is when he says, you know, all those things that you think will be cute, don't do those things. It's like, anytime you have like hey, wouldn't it be cute if we just did this little thing, you know? And it's always the cute things that you regret in your final design. You want an unsexy design, you know? And so one of the other reasons I think I think Deno has a lot of possible legs here is because of what Python Guido van Rossum says about TypeScript. We have learned through, I'm looking for graphics. I don't know. I normally don't search this way. The power of Python explained. I don't think this is the one. I fucking hate graphic interfaces. Oh God, there he is. Small STEM projects. No, bad. So I think the quote is, we have learned through experience that languages that are strictly typed are better for larger projects. And guess what? And he said, we are considering, I think, Python 3.7 or 3.8. At least one of those has annotations and typing and all that stuff. And it's basically a big old TypeScript wannabe. And he even says so. He even says like TypeScript in his quote. So you know what else is like TypeScript? Deno. In fact, Deno is TypeScript. And it was developed from the ground up. C# maybe a little bit, I don't know. So Deno is our attempt to breathe new air into the ecosystem, provide a modern productive power programming system that adheres to browser APIs. Deno is not a monolithic system, but rather a set of technologies that we believe we can repurpose for a variety of needs. Not every use case of server-side JavaScript needs to access the file system. See that? Our infrastructure makes it possible to compile out unnecessary bindings. This allows us to create custom runtimes for different applications. Ooh, that's new. They changed that. That means they made it so you can have file systems or not. Electron-style GUIs, really. Cloudflare worker-style serverless functions, embedded scripting of databases. I think we're going to see a lot of Deno in Electron-type apps. I think that's going to replace the Node on the back end for Electron, hands down, whether you like Electron or not. Because why? Because it has this sandbox on the back end. It's a much safer architecture for Electron apps. And then you can provide file system access if you want, but you don't have to. In order to vigorously pursue these ideas, we raised 4.9 mil to build Electron without all the crap. Right, and that's what Deno aspires to be. Remain MIT, we talked about that. Any more familiar with Chrome DevTools console than they are with the Unix command line prompt. More familiar with WebSockets and BSD sockets, MDN than man pages, Bash and Z shell scripts calling into native code will never go away. But JavaScript and TypeScript tools calling into WebAssembly code will be increasingly common. Many developers will prefer web-first abstraction layers. This is a very interesting idea. I don't particularly agree with it at all. I think that's the idea held by somebody who's been web-centric their whole life and everything that they've only developed and is completely oblivious to the containerization of the world that's happening right now. But nonetheless, I think it's a very interesting approach. Yeah, made it enough there. So basically what they're saying is that the world is going to be a bunch of connected web sockets, sandboxed, WebAssembly applications. And to tell you the truth, if WebAssembly actually happens the way that it's headed, that might happen. We might have containerization is another way WebAssembly and containerization have a lot in common, actually, because they are taking a lot of really highly. I mean, the smaller you make the containers, the more you make a big. BusyBox is just a big shell interactive application, right? So the smaller you make the containers, the closer you get to just having a bigger WebAssembly application. So you can have a big WebAssembly application, which is got a shell or not or whatever, or you can have a container. So WebAssembly and containers are going to be very interesting to see how they vie for application space. Because what this person is, what Ryan is suggesting here is that there is an alternative to this Kubernetes madness that we're seeing, which is a bunch of stuff that exists entirely in the web ecosystem, and is hosted anywhere. It doesn't matter where it's hosted, and Kubernetes containerization, stuff like that, shares a lot of those same ideas. We don't care where it's running or what it's running on. We just, everything's talking to each other. Not only that, it's being orchestrated. So what I think is interesting about this is if this, first of all, I don't think it's going to get enough legs. I think Deno is awesome, and I think it's a great way to go. This is basically Electron. So this is somebody who's been in the Electron world saying more things need to be like Electron. Electron is this like contained environment that has everything in it and can float around. It doesn't really matter where it is. And it's got, APIs and communication and high performance, WebSockets happening, exchanging data with Canvas. And I mean, the performance that they're able to get out of Electron apps, despite their size, I mean, the real-time performance, first time I saw it when I was typing in an Electron editor, I was like, wow, this is fast. It's because they're accelerating everything with the GPU through Canvas. And so I don't know. I think it's really fascinating. I still don't think it's anywhere nearly as significant as what's happening in the container space. But I do think it's interesting for applications, for web applications. I do think that some of the sandboxing concerns and stuff that they're talking about are going to be covered by containers in deployment. We haven't seen it yet, but eventually containers are going to be built into the OS, and I don't know how that's going to happen. I don't. I mean, these guys. Okay, so these guys are banking on the fact that web applications like Electron are going to be the composed, application objects that end up on your desktop, whether it's Chrome OS or your Linux desktop or whatever, Windows, whatever. So they're banking on the fact that applications are going to be more self-contained and less dependent on the underlying operating system. And at the same time, containers do the same thing. The difference is that containers have to have a container runtime right now, and Podman doesn't. So Podman, but it has to have systemd, and it's a Linux only thing. But so the interesting thing, that paragraph just got me thinking all kinds of things, because you could, what does the future look like? Is the future a sandboxed world? I've heard people say that Microsoft is doing the stuff that they're doing because they're trying to become a Chrome OS. They're trying to, or a Mac, they're trying to take over control of the devices more and more and more, so that the applications just get deployed much like iOS. If you've ever done an iOS app, which is just hell, you don't have access to anything. It's like, you have to, everything is in the cloud, right? You have to have cloud storage, you have to have this and that. Not completely. There is a little bit of file space storage, but it's so sandboxed away. But that stuff plays nicely with like an Electron app or something like that. So, and progressive web apps and all that. So, but some form of application layer, sandboxed, clean containerization is going to happen to keep operating systems secure over the next 10 to 20 years, because something has got to be better than just giving us free reign on the whole OS. We've seen what that's done, and it's just not possible to protect that. So it's going to be more about really locked down hardware. Some people will revolt, of course, as usual, like all the Linux people do. And then there'll be the applications that will just be put on there and they'll run in the sandbox. And it sounds like Deno is trying to go that route. Another route would be, of course, to embed some sort of containerization into the OS And you see Windows doing that with WSL a little bit. That WSL is just a container at the end of the day. And so yeah, it's gonna be fun stuff. Follow us for updates. I think I was not follower number 69. I think I was. I can't remember my number. Yeah, I've been following him for a long time. CLI. Secure runtime for JavaScript and TypeScript. They have a 1.8 actually. Their 1.0 was a while ago. Yeah, there's a couple of things that really indicate to me that they don't understand operations. So like one of them is curl to sh. Whenever I see this, I just cringe. I'm like, really? Do you really not care about security that much that you would tell people to do this? I know it's a common thing and everybody does it, but it's just so freaking dangerous to do that. Whatever, it doesn't matter. But so there's a number of things about Deno that are pretty cool. Deno run. See this? I mean, anything look familiar here? I mean, I don't know. I'm really curious to see how much the containerized stuff, yeah, is going on. There's a couple of things that really annoyed me about Deno that I tried it the first time. When it actually fucked with my bash RC. It did something to my bash RC, I think, when I installed it. I was like, really? That is not okay. More dangerous starting a Windows installer, you think? I don't know, man. At least the stuff in the Windows installer is signed by someplace you know where you got it. You don't know where this came from. You're trusting that this isn't getting intercepted by a man-in-the-middle attack. And it is HTTPS, so fine. But I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'm super. I just don't like that. And the whole NPX stuff now that people do. Oh God, do you guys know about this? It's like so insane. NPX. That's really, 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 really old. You know what I just did there? So I have a node project that has an init script, if I remember right, a bin. So the point I'm trying to make is that this sort of insecurity is built into NPM. It's like built into it. That's how stupid they are. NPX actually, it downloads the module and it runs the binary without checking care or anything. So this is this was a real popular thing everybody was doing for a while. They were like setting up cards. They were like making cards for themselves. And I said, fine, whatever. And so, yeah, you can make yourself, a repo. That's on, I don't even know where it is. I have to go find it again, and it'll just download it and run it. So, you know, anyway, I mean, if you're scared of this, then that kind of thing should really scare you too. I'm just probably overthinking it. There you go. Serve port 8000. I think Deno, honestly, I think Deno is going to be a really solid choice for backend where Node is concerned. One of the things that I really like about Deno is that they can rethink concurrency completely. They can do whatever they want with concurrency now because this language was designed. It wasn't accidental. And so they have a chance to really add more, non-event driven concurrency if they want. The thing that's always going to be a pain in the ass with JavaScript is that all their concurrency models are built around event driven concurrency, event single process event, async await kind of concurrency. And so to add true parallel concurrency to that on top of that, like they're trying to do with web workers and stuff or service workers or whatever, is kind of like, it doesn't really go with it. It's like, you can tell it was like, so yeah, well, which one should I do? Should I do await? Well, you need a service worker and you need await. Do you know what I mean? So now I have concurrency on the thread. So I have a core however you want to chop up the cores, however they end up doing that with service workers. And then each one of those cores can run its event-based, sort of callbacky concurrency, which, JavaScript is famous for. It's done really well with on a single core. The reason that I think Node and JavaScript have a short lifespan in the infrastructure space and will never be true competitors in any way in the infrastructure engineering area is because they don't have true parallel concurrency of any kind. They're always going to be confined to a single core, and only now are they beginning to scratch the surface of what it takes to do true parallel concurrency. Meanwhile, Go was designed from the ground up to be highly parallel. That was its primary mission at Google. So I just don't think JavaScript's ever going to be serious in that space, but it doesn't matter because in a containerized world, you only get 1 or 2 cores anyway, right? In a containerized world, who cares? And so I don't think it's going to be a language in the infrastructure space, but it's going to definitely stay a language in the application space. Because why? Because instead of scaling in the language, you can scale in the containers. So you can set like 8 replicas in your deployment in Kubernetes, and you can say, okay, I have 8 of these Deno apps. They're all running, right, in these containers. And they're all running nice and sandboxed and beautifully because they just have the Deno executable, which doesn't have a lot of dependencies and other shit, and there's no NPM and all that stuff. So the container is nice and light and pretty, and it's running in Rust, which is even better, right? I mean, the backend is all written in Rust, and so that you get this Deno container, and it does whatever you need it to do. And then I need 10 of them. Okay, well, I'm just going to set a policy of 10 replicas in my deployment in containers. So one of the reasons I'm so excited about Deno is that reason in the application space. Like, I'm going to write a microservice, I'm going to write a thing. The language really doesn't matter now that containers are a thing in terms of application deployment, like full stack type application deployment. It doesn't matter. The language doesn't matter so much because the container can be anything. You can run anything in there. And so, I mean, if you put Go in there, if you write your application, your backend application in Go at that point, I mean, who cares, right? It's got all this extra concurrency and stuff. That's in parallel concurrency. That's fine if you have to fire up, gRPC high performance communication with something else, with some other microservice mesh, or you're doing something like that. But if you're just serving up, traditional, flavored web pages, you don't need that. And you might be able to get more out of, like 1 or 2, and you won't need replicas because you can just do it all in a single container and just give it more RAM or something. But the idea of parallelism through additional container replicas is going to get over the limitation of, I think JavaScript, but I don't think JavaScript will ever be an infrastructure language because it's you cannot write the components, Docker, all that sort of thing with it. It wasn't designed to do that. And what will be interesting to see is if JavaScript enters the sort of configuration management space. I don't think it will, but because Python's already got that locked up tight. But it's possible. It's possible it can move into that space a little bit, but I don't know how it would do that. It just Python's got too strong a hold on that. So. If I have a TypeScript being designed by Microsoft, yeah, for sure. I don't have a problem with that at all. Nope. You know what else Microsoft designed? DirectX. I mean, Microsoft, I slam on Microsoft all the time for other things, but just, they've brought the world a lot of good stuff as well. Same with Google. I slam them all the time, but so yeah, all good stuff. That's quite a bit of a video there. All of that conversation was spurred by this examination of Deno, which is now a full-fledged company, 4.9 million caps raised by themselves, which is really cool. I love them because they're just such scrappy, little bootstrappy people. I love Deno. I love Ryan Dahl. I wish them the greatest of success. I can't wait to see all the cool things that they make. And now that I understand containers better, I think that Deno is going to have a really, really solid future. In fact, I think Deno's future is way more established than Node. I think Node is in trouble. Node has no governance right now. It's all over the board. It's got massive black eyes because of NPM's Lodash bugs and everything. Microsoft owns it now. It's it's just a disaster, honestly. And yeah, configure servers by hand or use things like Ansible and Chef. I personally, I don't do server management configuration right now. When I did it, I used Python and I used Fabric, which I was pre Ansible Chef, and that was what 15 years ago. So, and some Perl in there too. I'm going to end this video right now, and I'm going to take a little break, and I'll come on back and see what we can end up doing next.